Video E2: Policies for Environmental Protection. It's easy to diagnose the problems which occur in markets when externalities are present. Buyers and sellers don't consider a whole set of costs that they are imposing on others or on third parties. I sometimes say it would be like expropriation from the environment or a taking without compensation of environmental resources if we pay no attention to externalities. If we have no laws or regulations or social norms which prevent afflicting others with these costs, then in general we will have a society in which the environment is used and abused with impunity. But we and all nations and communities have laws or regulations or social norms which directly address some, though certainly not all, externalities. First, and most important, we have command and control regulations. These are, quite simply, standards which impose limits on the amount of or the level of environmental resources which can be used. Second, we have a whole class of what we call incentive-based policies. And these incentive-based policies are meant to work with market incentives of supply and demand, leading to efficient choices, low cost or high benefit choices when it comes to our use of environmental resources. These include pollution charges or pollution taxes, green taxes, such as, for example, a tax on gasoline or a carbon tax, and marketable permits. These are the tradable cap and trade permits or programs, which you sometimes hear about as ways in which we can set a permitted level of environmental protection, and then companies can trade amongst themselves in order to lower their costs of complying to the environmental regulation. We could also establish more complete property rights. We can think of environmental protection and problems with it as being a failure of property rights to include a right to not have environmental resources used without full and proper compensation. Establishing property rights to those environmental resources and a clean environment is one approach that is also a way of bringing environmental protection into our existing property rights-based market system. Finally, we could also simply disclose much more of what we do in terms of the rights and the obligations with respect to environmental protection. Sunshine and disclosure laws work by simply exposing and publicizing environmental impacts. In some cases, social norms then put pressure on firms to reduce impacts. For example, over the last 30 years, the Environmental Protection Agency, through its Toxic Release Inventory program, has required reporting and publishing emissions data related to toxic releases. These include emissions to air, water, and land. If we look, for example, at the surface water discharges across all industries in the US over the last 30 years, we see that there is a almost factor of 4 reduction in the amount of emissions that have been produced. Now, much of this gain happened as a result of traditional programs such as command and control, permit-based reductions in releases, but some of it is most certainly the result of firms now being held by social norms to be accountable for some of their releases. A note of caution, though, most of the gains happened in the first 10 years of this program, with very little additional environmental improvements seen in the last 20 years.